welcome to another episode of Awaz-e-Haqiqat, which also stands for the Voice of Truth. I'm your host, Chris Malika Bhadra, and today or tonight, depending on whichever part of the world you're listening to us from, I'm going to be talking about a very sensitive, important issue, which is dementia. And are we talking about dementia enough among South Asians in the South Asian diaspora? So if any of this conversation is triggering for you or it's upsetting your mental health, I would strongly urge our listeners to kindly step away, take a break, do whatever it needs to kind of ease your mental health, because these conversations are always hard to be had, but they need to be had at the same time. I have a very important guest with me, so I will come to her introduction. Yes, I have with me Aradhana Ganguly, who is joining us from Melbourne itself. So Aradhana was born in Kolkata and came to Australia in 1967 with a family. She has 35 years of experience in mental health and relationships. She completed her undergrad studies in psychology in 1980, followed by a master's in social work. She has extensive experience in counselling and supporting families, victims of family violence, facilitating men's behavior change programs, couple therapy, family therapy, and has worked as a family dispute resolution practitioner and child consultant as well. Aradhana has developed and facilitated training sessions in conflict resolution. She has worked actively to promote enhanced mental health and well-being across several organizations over the years. She supported her mother, who had Alzheimer's for nearly 15 years, and is a grandmom of 5 children aged between 2 and 10 years of age. On that note, and for our listeners, I refer to her as Mashi. So good evening, Mashi. How are you doing?
Good evening, Chris. I'm honored to be part of the program.
It's the pleasure and the honor is all mine, because of the amazing work that you do is something that we need to have periodic conversations on. And I've often realized South Asians often shy to have these very difficult, sensitive conversations. So thanks to you for having that, Mashi. All right, Mashi, I'll dig deep into the conversation right at the beginning. The first question that I want to start this conversation with is, why is there a hesitance to talk about dementia, or rather openly talk about dementia in the South Asian communities?
Look, I think, Chris, that things that fall out of the range of what is considered normal raises a lot of reluctance and hesitation in people. And it raises a lot of curiosity as well. The response is often, an incredible sense of curiosity, but also mixed with a lot of fear, because a little bit of fear, trepidation, because there's a stigma, a label attached to dementia, which is almost akin to mental illness. There was always a stigma associated with that.
Right.
Now that's being more openly discussed. But with dementia, there's still a long way to go, especially in the South Asian community, where people understand so little about it.
Right. Thank you, Mashi. All right. That's a good start to probably a very deep conversation, hopefully. But the next thing that I want to ask from you, Mashi, is dementia, as we as laymen know, is it primarily deals with memory loss, right? But within the migrant communities, how do the migrant families or relatives of the person who's going through this journey, how do they react, or how do they acknowledge the sufferer's memory problems?
I think the person suffering dementia can feel absolutely cut off from other people.
Right.
They often feel they can't find a language to express the issues that they're facing. They can't connect with a loved one. And, there are any aberrations to what is considered normal. Is sometimes very difficult to acknowledge. So even to just understand that they are actually suffering dementia and getting used to the symptoms takes a little time for the families to adjust, and for the sufferer to adjust, it also takes some time.
Right, Mashi.
But once the diagnosis happens, that acknowledgement is there, and they know, and they have a path forward as to how they're going to navigate this condition.
This journey, right? Mashi, one question that springs up in my mind is, often I've seen, maybe it's just how I have seen things, I could be wrong, that often we tend to be a little reactive to going to the doctor to get something diagnosed. I don't know if it's culturally universal or if it's something that South Asians go through. as South Asians, would you reckon that we are reactive when it gets going to the doctor to get something diagnosed, or we take things on a very proactive level?
You mean reactive in getting things diagnosed,
Yes.
as in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, in the South Asian communities, people are fairly switched on. They're fairly careful about their health.
Right.
They have health checks regularly. So they're generally, I would say, proactive. Now, with dementia, it's a very funny and very tricky thing, because when people are initially forgetting or asking questions over again, no one really knows what's actually going on. Is it, I mean, are they just asking the question, or is there actually something happening? It takes a while to understand that, hang on, there could be an issue here that needs to be explored. So it might go on for a little while before the family thinks that, okay, we need to get this checked out with the doctor, that this isn't just, oh, I just forgot their name, or I just repeated myself, or I forgot where I kept this. It could, you know, it takes a while to acknowledge that, okay, this could be something worth recognizing and diagnosing.
Thank you, Mashi. Thank you. Good to know that we are getting proactive about our health and health checkups. That's a good sign, I think. The next thing that I want to know from you is about duty of care, Mashi. So when we're talking about South Asian diaspora who are mostly settled overseas, how does duty of care differ when you're looking at the Western setup versus the South Asian setup?
I think in the South Asian communities, there is a sense that there's a personal responsibility. They feel a strong sense of personal responsibility for the patient. They feel they need to do something to make sure that their quality of life is excellent, and they really work hard at doing the best they can and to access the best of care and put in a lot of personal time and effort to that family member who is suffering from the condition. I find in Western communities, I mean, there are a lot of close families, but for them, it's more ensuring that a lot of the services are in place. They're in the right assisted care accommodation, or if they're at home, they make sure they get home help support and things like that. So the other thing in duty of care is that, regarding that personal responsibility, that in South Asian communities, I find that with my mother in assisted care accommodation, that a lot of the people from the South Asian backgrounds, and she was in it primarily in a Middle Eastern assisted care accommodation. So a lot of people from South Asian backgrounds. A lot of their families were very connected, very involved, and very, very engaged with both the family member in the care, as well as with the carers, the staff and the carers. They continually made sure everything was fine and their quality of life was as best as it could be. I found that in a lot of Western contexts, there were people who were not. There were people lonely, a lot of people who were very isolated, very cut off. Families wouldn't visit. I'm not saying in every case, but in a lot of cases, that was the situation. So I think there's far more active involvement in South Asian communities with a lot of personal responsibility.
I think it's only very hard to imagine how isolated that situation can be, because if you don't have any family visiting or someone who's there where you can just kind of connect, even remotely, it could be very hard to take on. I understand. If I have to take the spectrum towards the families, Mashi, so what are some of the issues that the families of these sufferers face in terms of assisted care versus if they are caring for that person at home?
I think with dementia, it's one of these conditions that people, as it's not only about memory loss, as the condition progresses, you have a number of changes that take place with regards to the person with dementia. A lot of patients develop paranoia. and can become quite aggressive. It didn't happen with my mother, thank goodness, but I've noticed in a lot of cases, that paranoia and all of that develops, and they become quite hard to manage at home. Very difficult to manage the anger, the tempers, and especially if they're male, there's uncontrolled aggression often. So that is a lot of the behavioral changes that occur is difficult for family members to handle. And so they really have to consider assisted care in those options. The other thing that is there is the deterioration of gross motor skills and balance and unable to walk steadily. And this I didn't realize until my own mother had dementia, that there were these physical effects of dementia.
Right.
Now, as the condition, there's muscle wastage with a lack of balance, inability to walk without support. And further down the track, there are toileting and showering issues where that has to be done for them. They can't do that for themselves. It's not just memory loss and everything else is fine. It's the whole deterioration of the body and mind. And so in that case, in that situation, even if you have a very dedicated family member who's a carer, they can't do that alone. They will end up with back problems. They cannot lift, they cannot maneuver a dementia patient through all of these day-to-day activities on a daily basis. So that is a huge issue in assisted care versus staying at home. Look, a major plus for me in choosing assisted care was that in the assisted care accommodation where my parents were at, is a lot of other Bengali families were there. They had known them for 30 years. And it was an assisted care facility from where the people came from Middle Eastern backgrounds. And so they were very loving, affectionate, caring, and very respectful to the patients. They were so, and so that was a huge bonus for me. So these are the considerations I have to I had gone through in thinking about assisted care. We all went through that.
Thank you, Marshi.
Yeah.
One question that probably I wanted to ask you is, how do the families of the sufferer, like on a hard day, on a difficult day, how do they take care of their mental health when it's difficult to control that person or something is not going according to plan? How do you take care of your mental sanity in those situations?
Look, it is really hard, I think, because the up and down of dementia is that some days you can connect with them and you can really engage with that family member with dementia, and it's very rewarding and a lovely feeling. And other days they're totally withdrawn and cut off, and there's really not much to do. There's not much you can do. And I think family support, my husband was immensely supportive in that situation. I could discuss these issues with him. It's really important to be able to debrief. And the other thing too is to be able to, the support from staff is also critical, the staff in assisted care, because they can talk about how things are, how the experiences are. And self-care is really important for the family member supporting the person with dementia, because they'll go through a lot of ups and downs, it's a gradual loss of someone from, it's losing them little bit by bit. It's grief every day. Conversations you're having about end of life wishes. All of these conversations are difficult conversations to have. So these are the things where it's important to, and also as a carer, there's a feeling that a close family member of someone with dementia, you always feel, especially South Asian communities, that you're not doing enough. You could do more. You should do more. But what more can you do? There's not a lot more you can do, but it's understanding that, look, it's okay. You're doing the best you can, and you also have to look after yourself. Absolutely. So this is where family support is really important, where families can really give you a lot of solace and comfort and support, and as well as the support from the care facility. who can talk about it in a more professional context as well as a personal context.
Thank you, Marshi. Thank you for highlighting that point. I want to talk to you about one important issue that migrants face is language barrier, because a lot of people don't have English as their first language. So, does this problem cause a bigger problem while communicating with the care staff? Or, as you mentioned earlier, when the sufferer has forgotten to communicate in English? What happens in that situation?
Look, I think language is a huge issue, because as it is, they become disconnected from the world and they become withdrawn. Now, if they can't communicate their needs to the carers in a language that the carers understand, the assisted accommodation can understand, it's immensely frustrating for the patient. So they need to be in a facility that can actually speak their language if possible, and make sure that communication is open so that they can communicate their needs. The other problem is that I face with my mother. My mother was very proficient in English, so there was no problem there. As her dementia progressed, she was reverting back to her mother tongue, and the first vestiges of that, I'd see her every day. Then one day I saw her communicating in Bangla with the carer, and of course the carer had no idea what she was saying, and I didn't realize that she was unaware that she was communicating in a language that that person could not understand. So these are things to be cognizant of, that eventually they may revert back to their mother tongue, and just to be aware of that, and to have provisions maybe where that I could actually be the translator, because I could translate what she was saying. But often people don't have that person, or I can't be there 24/7. So if someone can be there as an interpreter now and then to make sure that that person is able to communicate what's going on for them as much as they can, until they can no longer communicate that.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Mashi. And along with language, I think the other option is our food options. Some of us are very fixated to what we eat. It's very difficult to unlearn our food habits, because what you've been eating for 30, 35 years, I've seen that quite a lot. So does this food definition or food options, do they play any role when you have a family member in the assisted care?
It plays a huge role, because in South Asian communities, food is a big thing. It not only feeds and nourishes, but it is actually, it sustains. It's a variety of flavoursome dishes. It is the medium by which people connect with. They connect with one another through food. And in South Asian communities, they're pretty expert cooks, most of them. They cook very well, and they expect really excellent quality food, and the preparation, the serving. There's a lot of care that goes into that process. Now, when a common complaint with South Asian people in assisted care is that the food is bland and tasteless. And where food has been such an important part of their lives and their culture, to be having plain food on a daily basis, they can feel quite disempowered, because they feel a lot of things have been taken out of their hands. They can't control, they're not cooking anymore. They can't control what is being cooked. So the food preparation the right type of food can really add to their sense of well-being, I think. And if it's food that they enjoy, I think it really aids in how well they can adapt in the assisted care setting.
So, Mashi, while you had your experience with your mum, is there any option whereby you could tell the assisted care that could you please, change the food for my mother? Do they do that? Is there an option to get that done? Or
well, I mean, yeah. I was very lucky, because on one of the visits, I mean, suddenly one of the assisted care, she was lovely, and came in and said, look, I've tried this, taste this, see if you like it. To my father, to my parents, if you like it, we'll make it in the menu.
Right.
And how many people do that? So they did a lot of that. Sometimes some of the Bengali families would cook something in the actual kitchen and prepare something, and they tried to make things. And because it was a Middle Eastern facility, they really took those needs into consideration. So it wasn't exactly Bengali cooking, of course, but they really tried hard to spice up the dishes and to make the dishes more palatable, more tasty. So they really worked hard at that. They found that the values were the same, so they really did work towards that.
Now, it's good to know, Mashi, that they are accommodative with that manner, because often what we hear is when you have elders, probably give them what they like to eat, because it's just, you can't pull away everything from them. So it's good to know that assisted care had that option for your mother.
Yeah.
One question that kind of binds up everything is, Mashi, do you reckon there are any other hidden aspects concerned to dementia that are not addressed enough, or we don't talk about them enough?
Look, dementia is a really insidious and complicated condition to deal with, because it's akin to losing the family member little by little each day. So in a sense, the family members are grieving on a daily basis. The other thing too is, look, some days there's minimal response, some days there's a lot of engagement. But what I find is that the hardest time for both the family member, but particularly for the person with dementia, is when they know what they don't know. If they're completely out of it, they're withdrawn, it's okay. They're in their own world. When they understand what they don't know, they know they're forgetting, they're frustrated, they can't express what they're trying to say. They can't express their needs. They can't express their sense of disempowerment. That is a really hard part, when they've got enough consciousness to understand that, but they can't really do anything about it. So when they lose that sense of awareness, then it goes down one direction. That is hard for the carer. It's hard for the family. But when they still have it, but they've got dementia and they understand it, it's hard for the person suffering dementia. But I think self-care is really critical, and support services within the community, having an open dialogue about things. There's a lot of embarrassment, I think, for the sufferer, for the person with dementia, when they go to social functions, they can't remember who's that. I've seen her before, but I can't remember who she is. They can't remember what happened, what things that go on. People might say to them, "Oh, do you remember the day we had such fun? We had this, we had that, we did this, we did that," and they can't remember any of it. And it's frustrating for them not to be able to remember. So those kinds of things are really important. But I found that one thing that my mother responded really well is to seeing photographs. She loved seeing photographs. So she could relate, because dementia, they can go back and they have long-term memory. And so that's something that they can connect with. But short-term things that happened 6 months ago, a year ago, let alone 5 minutes ago, have gone out of their head. But long-term things that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that hold good memories for them, they can still relate through that.
Very hard to take on, Mashi. I can only imagine how you must have gone through that situation when your own parent was undergoing that journey. So before I wrap up the conversation, Mashi, what would be your message to anybody who might be listening to us?
I think not to sweep it under the carpet. The thing of dementia, the whole condition needs to come out of hiding. We need to have an open dialogue about it. We need to be able to openly discuss and normalize it, because just like if we had a physical condition, someone has a heart condition, someone has diabetes, some they could be someone had a stroke. We can discuss these things openly. I think it's important with dementia to be able to discuss, to have that open discussion about dementia and make it normal, because it can happen to any of us at any time. It probably will happen at some point. We're living longer, so it may happen early, it may happen late, but often it does happen. So to have as much awareness about it and discussion with people, just having more support around within the community, as well as being able to access professional supports and having good relationships with carers and people who support the person suffering dementia.
Thank you, Mashi. This was a very important conversation, very heartwarming as well, because whatever you've said through your journey and through what you've observed is going to help a lot of people who might be experiencing similar things in their own lives. Thank you so much for joining me on this important conversation tonight. And to my listeners, if you've heard me for the first time, I'm sure you've had a lot to take away from Aradhana Ganguly's journey, her own wisdom and experience with dementia. Please don't shy away from having these conversations. If yourself or someone around you has these symptoms, please get them tested. Please seek appropriate healthcare. And if you've heard us for the first time, I really hope that you please write to me at Awaz-e-Haqiqat@gmail.com. I look forward to your criticism, feedback, whatever thoughts you might have. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Sorry, I'm going everywhere. Thank you so much, Mashi, for doing this with me. Have a great night.
Thank you, Chris.